This week, we sit down with Katy Gooblar, a transformative leader in data and analytics, who has championed the importance of data-driven decision-making.
Okay, we want to do this. Let's get passionate about doing that, but let's get it right.
Known for her people-centric leadership style.
One of my strengths is to help other people to fill my gaps and find those people and lift them up.
Katy has adeptly navigated the challenges of educating C-suite executives on the power of data. Join us in sharing Katy's inspiring path. What really intrigues me is on your LinkedIn, you've got a quote, "A first-generation CDO without the title." I'm intrigued by that, so could you elaborate on that?
Often when I go to events or I'm involved in conversations, my job title doesn't really do me a great deal of justice. So my job title is Head of Group Data and Analytics for the Royal College of Nursing. But my role is, it equates to all of the components that a Chief Data Officer would do in a larger sort of style organisation or an organisation further on its maturity. Mm-hmm. So that includes things like having responsibility for data governance and excellence and modernisation, introducing advanced analytics and data science, mm-hmm. and starting to think about BI, MI, working closely with data protection and sort of the whole raft of things that come under the title data.
Right, okay. Yeah. I hear this a lot. Is it a hesitancy to commit from the powers that be, do you think? Because lots of companies, I imagine, does your company have a CTO?
Nope.
Oh, so they don't have any C-suite in technology or data or...
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So it's early maturity, I think it is, and lack of awareness of what the requirements are to get to the point that they want to realise the vision that they have. Mm. And for an organisation like the RCN, we are over 100 years old, really driven by purpose, mm-hmm. and have grown and maintained a good membership base for a long, long time. Data hasn't been at the top of their sort of agenda because there's other focuses. It's all about supporting nurses and support workers.
Yeah.
So it's a necessity because the world is moving on and the ways of working and the practices are different now. And being able to sort of utilise that new technology, that new approach. So we do have some of those C-suite roles that you would expect from sort of history.
Yeah.
But those newer ones around product ownership and product design or the chief technology officer roles are parts of other functionality and other directors' responsibilities at the moment.
Okay, so I imagine that's a challenge in itself at times.
Yeah, if you'd have asked me that question like a year ago, it'd have been a very different answer to the one today, because I spent a lot of time planting a lot of seeds and taking people on a journey really to explain what the future could look like and making use of different... I was quite sort of innovative in how I was going to take the C-suite on that journey of understanding and awareness and just, begged, borrowed and stole from every department to try and make it work. I was using external partnerships with students at universities to demonstrate use cases and the art of the possible. So really took it in a different direction. So now I feel really supported because it's coming to fruition. You know, there's those things that I spoke about a year ago. The light bulbs are coming on. People are now coming to me when they go, I don't know what to ask for, but I know that I need to speak to you. And that's sort of a momentous move, really.
Amazing. Good for you.
Want to go.
And that takes a level of braveness as well, I imagine.
Braveness, or I've been called a relentless optimist before.
I like that one. Yeah.
So, previous manager, director I reported into had said, "You're just consistent." Like, so I don't know whether it was. I don't know whether I'd call it bravery or I've just annoyed enough people that they want to support me along the way.
Like recruiters, us recruiters. I think that's our approach as well. So in terms of, I guess, data strategy, a lot of it really is influencing and making it relatable and explaining what's possible. So what's your approach to that?
I think it's make friends and get buy-in.
Yeah.
I think... and I'll quote sort of Caruthers and Jackson at this point because it's all about the coffee and the cake.
Right.
Because that's what it's built on is that I can't sell a dream if somebody hasn't seen that vision or seen what it is we're trying to achieve. And I think by making it real to those departments, to those people that are interested, who have some of that influence and have some of those levers, is very much about telling them their story and telling them what's going to be different for them. So I did try, and I made mistakes along the way. And this is my second head of data and analytics role. So I've learned a lot in that background. But I did make the mistakes of trying to sell big. I tried, first of all, to sit down and go, we're going to have this fantastic big data strategy that's going to do all these different things. And then we're going to need money to do that. And I didn't win anybody. I didn't win any hearts and minds. And I had to scale it right back and go, okay, so what are the questions that we really need answering? How are we going to make something that's really valuable and really different to the way that we're doing things successfully at the moment? Because it wasn't as if we were in a commercial setting where things were failing and data was the only option.
Okay, yeah.
So it was a bit scaling it right back and having individual relationships.
So breaking it down and making it relatable to those individuals. So what's an example of a conversation you had to get that buy-in?
So starting with looking at some of the risks on the organisational risk register and looking at the core value streams of work that we do. So we're a split between a membership organisation that supports the college aspect. So in our title, we're a chartered college that supports leadership and development of nurses and nursing practitioners and the workforce that supports the nursing profession. And then the other side, we're a trade union. So we have everything that you would expect from employment relations and industrial action and sort of that campaigns and organising. So splitting the view into those different components, I started looking at the things like what kinds of cases do we get, what trends, patterns can we see in the data, how does that split across different regions or countries that we support, because then that makes that story real and gives them sort of self-service access to information that they need at the point that those regional directors, operations managers need, not waiting for a month later to get a data report that's then already something that they knew or out of date. And by doing it in that way, it was very much getting into the day-to-day. What were they thinking and feeling, and testing some of those hypotheses that they were experiencing and helping them prove that that was the case or disprove a myth or a bias or something in the data, and then just show them some cool stuff we could do with it, some of the exciting advanced analytics stuff.
I like it. So how did you carve your way or navigate your way through this journey? Because I imagine you've not had a predecessor in roles you've worked before. So how did you know what to do and what would be the best approach?
That's a great question. How do you know?
How did you do it?
So I think it's been gradual. It's been quite organic for me.
Okay.
So my background isn't, I never describe myself as sort of a data practitioner, and I do more now because I'm having more of those conversations, but it's just a combination of steps in my career that's led me to this part. I'm much more affiliated with saying that I get the best out of other people, and that happens to be in the data space, and I really enjoy the nosiness of working in data, because that's it. We're looking at people's behaviours, we're looking at how they've responded to an action, and that's what we capture when we capture data. We're looking at the actions somebody's taken or the results that they've achieved or done, and then we want to manipulate that to make a decision or have an insight to making future decisions. So just being focused on people has been my real area, and I started my career mainly in sort of the policing sector. And so data to me was looking at really interesting data. Like, it wasn't looking at sales figures, which don't hold my heart, I'll be honest. But it's got to have a real value purpose as the areas I work. And growing from there, so working out what'll help me do that job. And my first role was as an analyst, but I was looking at patterns and trends, and that excited me, and that was interesting. And then growth into leadership was from there. And just having a great network. I looked at other people's journeys and learnings as well.
Yeah. I was going to say, you take a very people-centric approach to data strategy. Yeah. So how have you embedded that in a more structured manner?
So I think it's about recognising the gaps in my skill set, I think has been the focus for me, because a lot of the people focus has been, I know where I want to get to. I've got the vision. I want other people to help me develop that mission of how we get there. But I can't do it on my own.
No.
So, and because I haven't come from that STEM background, I didn't study data analytics in a science or maths environment. I did psychology, and that was based upon research methods and statistics, but it wasn't in the computer science space that when I started have led to a lot of these leadership roles. So I knew where my gaps are, and I know where my strengths are, and I know that one of my strengths is to help other people to fill my gaps and find those people and lift them up. So I'm not sure it was necessarily really conscious that I was doing it, but just to say we really need to work together, and there's to do that, it's a collaboration.
Sure. There's a vulnerability in that as well, isn't there? Because sometimes as a leader, you think you should know everything, and there's an ego attached to it. Like, I don't want to admit what my weaknesses are, but really it is about complementing skill sets. You know, you don't necessarily want to build a team with loads of mini-yous.
No, I definitely do not want to build a team with mini-me's. It'd be a very challenging space to work in. I'm quite energetic and ideas generated, and I know that from really early on in my career that was saying I need that support to help me finish things, and other people are really generated in following steps through and to the end. And for me, there's a bookend approach. I really like the beginning of starting something, and I really like the end of it, and the bits in the middle I need to really work on to get there. And I've surrounded myself with people that have been throughout each of my roles who've been fantastic at keeping me grounded, keeping me on track with that, but maybe haven't been always ideas generated or willing to test out different ideas or having that safe space to do that. And I think that's what I've encouraged in others.
Okay. So when you're interviewing and scaling your team, how do you assess if you're going to work with that person in a way that's going to complement your skill set? Is it something you really hone in on at interview stage, or hope that organically you can lead someone into a certain path?
I think there's two considerations at this stage. And when I talk about sort of the skill sets, in having a team, I'm looking for gaps in the team's skills as well, not just my own. It's like, what do the team need to flourish? Where are we needing to grow? How can other people learn from shared? So there's an assessment for me around, will this person be a fit for what we're trying to achieve? But I've also worked predominantly in really regulated, structured organisations where the interview processes have been really detailed with process.
Yes.
So the amount of flexibility that you have to make some decisions in that it is limited to what is considered best practice in the recruitment style. So on quite a few occasions, and I'm sure people who will know if this is them, have fallen into a little bit of a wild card where they haven't scored the highest on an interview scoring matrix. But I've just seen something in them that's had the right passion or the right attitude and the right way of thinking, really, because especially in data, my perspective very much is that you can teach a lot of those skills.
Sure.
It's what you can't teach, it's more often than not, is that curiosity, that nosiness, that drive to really follow down a rabbit hole in the data and understand that there are more options and that you won't have a final answer.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
And that's a skill, I think.
Yeah, and totally, I agree. Some processes are very black and white, and that eliminates grey, but people can be grey. There's not always certain traits. So it does allow for that. So is that something, if someone does score low in what you'd think, for example, a data analyst should be higher, would you still take them on, essentially?
Yeah, so where the scoring matrices are a challenge is because they're not in the organisations I've worked for, are not often designed for data professionals in mind.
Okay.
So they're a generic sort of recruitment process where you're following a script almost of standard questions that are there for the right reasons, you know, to make it a fair process, to ensure equity of engagement. But then the nuance of data is quite different, and often the greatest analysts don't perform fantastically well on those generic tests.
Yeah, true.
Often a lot of the people I work with have really specific skill sets, and they're not always the ones that measure well on say public speaking or communication but they're great at the job that is required of them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times that I've had to say, can we question the process around how we're scoring, and can we weight it to professional expertise or skills that I specifically need? Because I have been in the situation before where we have brought somebody in who scored really well and hasn't been able to perform at the job.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see anybody fail, and you're just setting somebody up not for success in that situation. So there's often challenges.
Yeah. And how can how can a score tell you if someone's going to be a relentless optimist as well?
Yeah, that is true.
It's tough. It's tough. So interestingly, STEM background, as we know, is a big area for those coming into a data role.
Yep.
Have you found challenges along the way from not being from a STEM background?
More imposter syndrome, if anything.
Really? Yeah.
So I don't find the challenges that others would see or experience. I think there's a lot of finding yourself in a room full of really technical professionals that question whether I should be there, or having that approach. I think as I've got older and focused more in on what my strengths are, that's helped me. But it does mean that you still have that little wobble in situations. And also, the way my brain works is with mass beautiful chaos often, and this ideas generation and that real thinking of strategy outside the box often comes with, I can't recall the buzzwords. So even though I've done training myself, or I've got qualifications in those spaces since and along my career, sometimes those words just don't pop straight away. No. And so I find myself going, I'm trying to express this term or this technical concept, and I go, but I take my brain takes that few moments to catch up.
Yeah.
So I'm always conscious of that.
Has it held you back at all? Not through your ability, but through others, maybe when you were more junior and they were asking, are you from a STEM background? Has that held you back in any kind of levels of career path?
I think because I began my career journey before the boom of data.
Okay.
I think I've ridden it really well.
Yeah.
So I started back in about 2008 in my first analyst position, and the terms that you hear now, big data didn't exist, ChatGPT wasn't around, those things weren't there. So it was, the focus very much was lots of people from psychology, criminology, statistics, drove a lot of those roles.
Okay.
And in a lot of the government agency and industry. So I think there's been a natural progression that I've been at the right place at the right time for some of those developments.
Sure.
And when big data started to become more mainstream or more real, I was able to translate that communication of, well, what does this mean for the companies I was working in? How can we be prepared? So AI is now the next thing. So I'm at that point where it's been around for a long time, and there's been conversations about the changing terminology and words that are used to describe it. But when you start to layer that back, we've been doing a lot of those practices on a lot smaller scale for a longer period of time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But it's how you follow that buzz now that is keeping on top of those big buzzwords.
Yes. I actually saw something you shared on LinkedIn about generative AI. And it was really interesting because there's two camps. And I think the way he described it was panic and wonder.
Yes. Yeah. It's a fantastic video.
It really is. Yeah. It really is. Which camp do you fall into?
I think my it's a head and heart thing.
Yeah, okay.
Because I have the wonder of the opportunity and the difference it can make, and I use it regularly more myself. I think one of my areas I'm really conscious about is my writing style. So I use it to help me define and articulate what I'm trying to say. I have lots of jargon, I have lots of fluff and words, and there's a few people who have done that role in person throughout my career that have been really supportive and helpful. But the sort of that future is that I have that at my fingertips now. It really is a sort of a co-worker in my pocket that helps me with some of the defining and being more articulate in describing what I'm trying to say. But so that's the wonder side of it.
Yeah.
But then on the panic side, I think when you know more, you see a lot more of the flaws and you see a lot more of the challenges. And I find myself in some of those conversations that I'm having with colleagues who see the wonder and are really excited about what this could mean, who don't know the challenges and don't know the risks and aren't aware of things like the hallucinations and that it's really new technology that's developing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm head and heart at the moment.
Yeah, that seems like a sensible approach. Yeah. Because people do dive head first into one of them, don't they? And it is divided.
Yeah.
But, you seem to be taking like a sensible approach to it. So how would you advise those in your team or the co-workers that are getting carried away with all the wonder? How would you bring them down to earth somewhat?
I think, it's framing the conversation, isn't it? It's not saying no, it's saying yes, but, or yes, and. Because I think quite a lot of the opportunity is going to add lots of value. And it's going to redirect the types of roles that we're performing and the work that we're doing, and adding humans to do the really valuable stuff and less of the mundane day-to-day bits that can be automated that are not already. But the opportunities sort of going forward and reframing that question is very much about, right, okay, we want to do this. Let's get passionate about doing that, but let's get it right. So a lot of the conversation that I'm having right now is about, we want AI over here. This is the sort of mission or the goal of the future, and understanding actually what does that mean, because it's just a term, a catch-all term. But really understanding the things to get out of that is data governance, data quality, data architecture and structure to enable those things to happen. And if you can tell and speak to somebody around what the benefits are, and you show them the roadmap to getting there, they're much more open to, okay, supporting those steps along the way, because they know what we're trying to achieve together, rather than saying no, it's not possible.
Yes. And if you say no, ultimately people get defensive and they just carry on anyway. So it's just having those nice open conversations.
I think on that as well, there's a capacity conversation, you know, because I think a lot of the conversations really now are about making this mainstream, and the accessibility to everybody in day-to-day lives of use of AI or data is really apparent, and it hasn't always translated into the workplace. So that journey of maturity and that ability to take people on a development route to get them to where we need to be thinking in a workplace, it has still a journey to go, and I can't deliver that for everybody. So I've got to trust, I've got to release that opportunity to other people to say, this is a great idea, let's work on it together, but you can lead it.
It has been thrust upon us, hasn't it? And like the legislation or implementing it into a workforce, like you said, we just can't keep up with the advancements. But it's great that, you know, taking an open approach to it and navigating through it together, really, because we don't all know the answers, do we?
No.
We don't. No. So moving on to inclusion and diversity in the workforce, given the gender imbalance in data, and it's something that you probably you didn't think of too much maybe a year or so ago.
No, it's really interesting because the whole conversation around EDI is, although I've had an awareness in the organisations I've worked in because of the nature of organisations, I think until a few years ago, I hadn't recognised the challenges because I grew up in inner city Leeds, where, you know, there was multiculturalism. The school I went to was really diverse. The populations I grew up in were really diverse, and where there was sort of really strong, powerful women that had opportunity to really drive forward their own ambitions and ways of being. I'd not really considered that until I'd gone into some of the workforces and especially in data, that I started to look around the room and really question about diversity in lots of different ways. And like you said, it occurred to me only about a year ago, the real challenge around the gender imbalance, because I've naturally surrounded myself with women in data. You know, there's been strong women who have influenced a lot of my life and my decisions. But the events I go to, I can stand there and look around and count on one hand the other women in the room, and then that almost puts a pressure to be that person that role models for the future. And I hadn't really considered that as being part of my role before that. It was a very enlightening moment of strangeness.
And what do you think we can do then to drive A, the awareness, and B, try and take proactive steps to make sure we do challenge the gender imbalance?
I think I go back to that whole story about data and what it is. I think even now, if somebody was to say, how do we get girls into or women into data? It's that doesn't sell the story about what the job is or what the opportunity is. If you look at things like social good or value and purposefulness of organisations, I think that appeals to younger people about what areas they want to work in. And data is a mechanism. It's a tool to get us there. There's not that many organisations or industries now that don't have a role in data. So it's more about how do we sell the story of what that actually means. And at a younger age, if somebody had said to me, would you like to nosy around in other people's private information? I'd go, yes, please.
Sign me up.
Yeah, and just little things that would have made that industry more accessible at a younger age. I think I fell into it. That's my background. And I still see now people that are applying, and I work a lot with universities, but applying for data science masters or degrees, and they're missing that purpose part. So they're really great at the technical and they come out, but they're not always business ready. They have still a long way to go to say, okay, so what are you wanting? Why are you wanting to get involved? Where is your thought process in this, rather than following a tick sheet of I can do classification modelling, I can build algorithms. Like, okay, but for what purpose? What are you trying to achieve?
And
I think it's what are the drivers, and I can't obviously speak for a whole gender or two whole genders. But for me personally, I think if there was more access to the social good aspects of what data can achieve and how you get involved in that industry, rather than just seeing data as a financial tool, then it would have appealed to me in a different way to the way I ended up finding that role.
Okay. So if I was a young female curious about the world of data, thank you, and looking to go into the world of data, but I don't know much about it at all, I don't have any mentors or access, or I don't think I've got access to mentorship, what would you advise?
I think there's a split here, and there's a split on what is social mobility and the grouping of people who naturally have opportunities to mentors and to having experiences. And I think that probably that area is a little bit more well covered, because I think there are mentorship programs, but you have to know about them, and you get that from the adults that you surround yourself with. So I think for the group that are, I don't want to say more disadvantaged, but from a background like mine, where you are living in a city, you don't have all the opportunities, you don't have positive role models who are doing all fancy jobs, then I think the idea is just to start speaking to people, asking, making connections on social media with people who are in those roles. I know a lot in my network work a lot more with people who reach out to say, is there any areas I can learn? I direct people to a lot of the basics in understanding what analytics is and how they can use it. And there's a great guy called Alex the Analyst on YouTube. Fantastic content for free for anybody.
Okay.
I also a founding member for the 93% Club, which is about helping and mentoring young people who don't have those opportunities, and working on the 93% of the population in state schools.
Right.
So there's a lot out there already, and there's a lot of, like I say, social good initiatives. The challenge still with those is meetups cost money. If you've got to travel somewhere, and if you're from a family who don't have spare cash, then you won't be going for an unpaid internship, and you won't be going for an interview or travelling, for that opportunity.
You're right.
It just doesn't exist.
London-centric still to a degree. And you're right, unpaid internship, it's like, that's just not possible.
Yeah.
And they do that, in media, in fashion, in a lot of industries, and that needs to change. It really does. And could you talk to us about your side venture then as well?
Yeah, so I think I started this about a year ago when I wasn't getting all the buy-in that I was expecting or hoping for in my day job. And I thought, right, what else can I do? What else can I think about and giving back? And I really like that intro to data, so that foundations of data, and how we make it more accessible, how we bring people in from different backgrounds into these roles. And I started to think about setting up my own business, and part of that was joining forces with the Data Literacy Academy on their Foundations of Data modules and storytelling with data and interpreting and communicating data. And that was really because I really like that first stages. I like to get people going on how they identify and feel confident. And that's all about mindset. It's all about confidence and personal growth. And it felt like a bit of a way in. And as an organisation, they've got really great values. They're a great bunch to work with. So I support them as an educator. And I've got a few other bits and pieces under that heading of my own business separately as well. And ultimately, I think part of that is me building up visibility and a brand that can then give back and go into places like schools or people in the care system who find themselves looking at their prospects thinking that it isn't a full-time job that they're looking for. You know, it's just not getting into bad habits.
Yeah.
So I think that's my passion. That takes money, and if you're not from a family with money, you've got to build up to that to give back.
Yeah.
But that's where I'd like to get to.
Amazing. You like to keep busy.
Yes. Yeah.
You do. So you mentioned you've got a business as well.
Just starting.
Right, okay.
Yeah, just starting Gooblify. It's just, I've registered the names and the brand, but not set up the website yet. But that's
the starting point.
Just brand new. Yeah,
amazing.
I say my dad did that for me.
Did he? Well, like you said, work to your strengths.
I know.
And delegate other tasks
He's
as well.
retired, he's enjoying it.
So what does a future look like in terms of you personally and also data, which I know is quite a big open question?
Yeah. So I've got a lot to do where I am. So that's in my future here is that we've just started our first ever data strategy.
Fab.
We're looking at developing out things like data warehousing and really taking that journey with the RCN together. There's a real opportunity to then broaden that to our members and who we work with, so the wider nursing community and working with our partners in that space. So that's the immediate future. I'm also studying an MBA, which as an apprenticeship. Wow. So there is a lot going on. But I think that growth into, and going back to the first point you asked me about with not the title, is that I think developing out the skills even without that title is still a possibility. So I think I'd like to explore some of the non-exec roles as well with other organisations who don't have the budgets to support a chief data officer, and help support them on at least getting started and filling some of those gaps, especially those purposeful, valued organisations that I'd like to work with more, so charities. And then longer term from there, I think I'd like to explore where I take that business, and that's I've kind of trying to cone the term of the data skills chaperone. So really wanting to make it accessible to, like I say, to people who are either upskilling or reskilling. So the whole workforce that now finds themselves being faced with the future of data and AI, but they've been in a workforce for 15, 20 years, and they're looking at it going, I just don't understand this. I just don't know what this means for me or for my roles. And especially a lot of the smaller organisations who are also led by people who don't have that background. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a few different plates spinning for the longer term future.
Yeah, and we can get caught up in the industry, being in the industry, but there's so many businesses that haven't even thought about data strategy, never mind being in the infancy of it. Yeah. So what would you suggest then, if a company maybe were curious but didn't have the funds, the best thing for them to do would be work with an independent consultant?
So I think there's different ways, because again, independent consultancy can be expensive.
Yeah,
it can. And if you're thinking about when as a small organisation or a small business and you're trying to work out just how to keep going and pay salaries for the staff that you already have, that might not even be an option. One of the sort of innovative ways that I talked about getting use cases in was, if you've got somebody that's got that passion, there are lots of students who are learning and are trying to use that real data, because a lot of the initial training around data and analytics and data science is based on data sets that are freely available online.
Yeah.
But that context about using it for a real purpose in a real business and working with real data is still that gap. So I've been working with Eden Smith under their Nurture program, and that's a slightly different business model where you're able to pay for an administration fee to work with a student and for them to build out the concept that you're trying to achieve. And that's working really well for us because it means we can do work that we can't afford to do at the moment. We don't have that business case ready, nor would I have been able to sell it without evidence in it.
Yeah.
So at least now, having done previous semester with a cohort of 12 students and then just going into the next one for 6 students, is working with them on their dissertations to demonstrate the skills that they've learned throughout their university degree, but on our real data, so that we're also helping them on their journey of this isn't beautifully clean data that you're going to get downloaded from the internet, but you're going to find something that we didn't know and we really value.
What a great partnership.
So,
very creative in your approaches. And you have to be, don't you? But I think that's amazing. Right, so we're going to move on now to the quick fire data lightning round. I do have the questions written down, so bear with me. Okay, so number 1. What's one common misconception about data that you'd like to debunk?
That it's a exclusive group.
Right.
So I think data feels that you must know all the terms.
Yes.
You don't.
No.
So you can join from any background, any industry, any role that you've performed before. You've just got to have an appetite for it.
Amazing. Like it. Name a book, event or podcast that you think every data enthusiast should explore.
Wow. The Chief Data Officer's Handbook by Carruthers and Jackson.
Okay.
So Caroline Carruthers and Peter Jackson.
Amazing
book.
Finish this sentence. Data is the key to
everything.
Love it. Nailed it. If you could offer advice to someone just starting their data career, what would it be?
Focus on your own strengths. So what interests you? You've got to have an interest.
Yeah.
The world of data skills, approaches, opportunity is huge. If you try to focus on it all, you'll get lost and you won't find your niche.
Yes.
So if you start with something you're really interested in, and you see this day to day with people who are interested in sports, they'll do sort of betting apps and stuff like that, looking at the data to help make predictions, or the sort of the personal fitness industry. Whatever your interest is, there is data available, and that you need to start somewhere that you're passionate about.
Yeah, such a good idea. I like that. In your opinion, what will be the most significant development in data in the next 5 years?
Most significant development, I think, will be around bringing data governance to the forefront. And when I sort of reluctantly use the word data governance because it doesn't mean a great deal to everybody else, unless if you're not inside that data profession. For me, inside the RCM, we call it data excellence and modernisation. So I think the real focus on AI is going to make companies look inward.
Yes.
And start to look at the quality of the information that they have and whether they need it all or whether they need to invest in processes and approaches and improvements to making it better.
Great answer. Well done. And that's it.
Oh, thank you.
Natural. I enjoyed that.
Do I think that AI is going to suddenly become cognizant and causes any trouble in the future? I don't personally. I think that'll be a choice. I'm not worried about that. Don't be scared of this thing that you this little fiefdom that you've got and think, well, that's actually my job and I've got to hold on to it, otherwise I'll be redundant.